Hi everybody, Keith here, bringing you another Reign of Guilds update. Gonna go through patch 4 and patch 5. I was not initially too excited about going through patch 4 because there isn't a whole lot to talk about, but then patch 5 was a banger. So let's get through both real quick, starting with patch 4. Patch 4 addresses first and foremost if you've bought a key using the Reign of Guilds website, you may be having some difficulty obtaining your DLC rewards, so I'll flash this on the screen. I assume that if you did this, you know how to fix this because like me, you're probably following the patch notes pretty closely, but regardless, they are working towards a solution to get us our DLC items, so that's great. Reign of Guilds has taken a pretty tough stance on people acting naughty in the community. They have muted over 10 players for 100 days, and they also called out a couple of people in particular by posting their Steam ID in the patch notes. I have never heard of this practice before. I don't really know how I feel about it. It feels a little bit of a witch hunt sort of thing. On the same token, it's kind of hilarious. I don't know how I feel about it, but hey, it's unique. So if you like a unique game developer studio, these guys post Steam IDs of people who are being bad. So there's that. 2 days later, before patch 5 came out, they released another statement saying what they would do to folks who were sort of, again, exploiting XP in varying ways, usually involving like logging off and doing some goofy stuff like that. Regardless, they once again called out their character name in the patch notes, and they mentioned that they were going to make their karma extremely bad and make it so getting that karma back would be extremely hard. So, again, I've never heard of a development team not only just banning people, but being like, this guy, and here's their name, is banned. But it's pretty funny. It's unique. So that's the thing. So maybe don't cheat in Reign of Guilds if you don't want to be publicly called out. Moving on to patch 5, this is the real stuff. This is going to be some pretty impactful stuff for those of us that play. First off, it calls out once again that abusing the game in varying ways to get XP via exploits is going to result in some bad things happening to your account. So they once again are taking this very, very seriously. So I would be careful if I were you and you are engaging in any of this kind of stuff. First off, the damage formula is being tweaked. And this is something that I've heard a lot of community people talk about on Discord and what have you, is the time to kill seems like it's kind of off. And I've seen this in both extremes. I've heard of people fights ending in a second or two, quite literally. And I've also heard of two people being unable to kill each other. Like the fight just never ends. So these sort of tweaks are hopefully going to fix that. I'm very interested in playing this myself and seeing if I notice any changes and if fights seem a little more interesting than where they are right now. Okay, so now let's talk about the most exciting thing, at least exciting to me, part of this video, and that's talking about the vocation changes that have happened to each vocation in patch 5. So the first one I want to talk about is actually Master of Steel. They have doubled down on adding the physical defense of this class. So originally it was 160, 280, 560, depending on the tier of Master of Steel you were. Now that's been doubled up to 320, 560, 1120. So wow, especially for PvE content, this guy is a monster now. So I'm really interested to see if more people play this class. Moving on to the Assassin. Now what's interesting about this is almost nobody played Assassin. Everybody played Thief, or some people even played Blacksmith because Assassin just did not have enough going for it. But now they have doubled the physical defense to the point of where Master of Steel previously was. So now not only can you hide, but you're actually pretty tanky, which is pretty interesting. So the Assassin is going to be a lot more usable than it was previously. So I'm curious to see if more people start playing it. I still think the Assassin needs a little help, but that's for another video. Next up, the Thief. Now the Thief got huge nerfs very badly. First off, the physical attack, the magical attack, the physical defense, and the magical defense were all removed. So a huge drop in power for the Thief. On top of that, pickpocketing got temporarily removed, and now it's called begging. And rather than take somewhere around like 3,000, 4,000 tailors at a time, silver tailors at a time, now you're only taking 4, 6, or 10. And they're going to do that until they rework the entire system. I get the impression they're going to add either a karma drop or guards that can see you. There's a lot of speculation going around of what they're going to do about Thieves. But right now, before they get to that, Pickpocketing has become begging, and instead of taking something like 4,000 tailors, you're taking 4. So a ginormous difference. If that wasn't enough, and I'll be honest, I feel like that was enough for you thieves out there, they have also made it so while you are hidden, you can't reload your crossbow. Now, I will say this one I think they should have done. A lot of people were complaining about how thieves could hide and shoot and hide and shoot, and that seems to be a little overpowered. On top of that, if you can't see what you're doing, it kind of makes a little bit of sense that you can't reload a crossbow very effectively. So I think this is good. The other stuff seems a bit much, but poor thieves, I apologize. It's not a good time for you guys. Moving right along to the Blacksmith. The Blacksmith physical defense and magical defense was increased. If you are sleeping on the Blacksmith, their stats are pretty stacked. And on top of that, now again, they have doubled their physical defense and physical defense and magical defense. Bananas how powerful these guys are. Like, just great stats. Now, they don't have a wonderful skill, like a physical skill. So they can't do the teleport like Crusaders, and they can't become unkillable like a Master of Steel, but just like the raw stats are just bananas. Blacksmiths are a great class. Next up is the Gladiator, and they removed the penalty to physical defense and magical defense. So now they kind of sit in between the Crusader and the Master of Steel. Normally, the Crusader has a increased magical defense and a decreased physical defense. Master of Steel is reversed. They have an increased physical defense and a decreased magical defense. Gladiator is just vanilla. But that's interesting. So if you're someone that doesn't like surprises and just wants to have, okay armor for all things, but you still want to have the physical class, like shared skills like your taunts and things, Gladiator might be the way to go. So it suddenly has become usable and viable. So I like this change a lot. Speaking of the Crusader, they also got a increased penalty to physical defense. So now they get hit even harder by physical things, but they did get a bonus to magical defense. So they're really leaning into these guys being mage killers, which I like. I gotta say, the physical defense penalty is quite a thing. However, it kind of makes them very unique, and it lets the Master of Steel, and to a lesser degree, the Gladiator, really feel like more of the PvE or physical on physical tank. So I like this change. I hope that people still play Crusader. Crusader does have some wonderful skills in the stuns and the teleports and the attack speed buff. So still a good class, but I think that's a pretty big hit, but we'll see how it plays out. Next up is the Weaponsmith, and just like the Blacksmith, again, this is a crafter class, so I think this gets slept on a little bit, but now they do even more physical damage, these guys. The stats, again, for the Weaponsmith is just something else. Now, to my knowledge, Weaponsmith has no physical skills, vocation skills, but man, just the raw stats, again, just another monster class that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. The Hunter, which is arguably one of the more powerful classes in the game, got its physical attack bonus removed. I don't know how bad this is, and I only say that because I know Hunters do an ungodly amount of damage, so does this bring them back down to earth like the rest of us, or does it nerf them so much that they're useless? I don't know. I do know that a lot of people are complaining about them. I've heard of people getting hit for like thousands of damage in some instances, so maybe this will be okay, but we'll have to see how it shakes out again. Inquisitor also got a really nice buff. They got a magic defense buff where it's been doubled from 120 to 240 at tier 1, all the way up to 840 at tier 3. So it's all been doubled across the board. So Inquisitor's a cool class. I think that stripping buffs off of your enemies is going to be huge in this game, and so I think it's going to be a really great class, especially when PvP becomes a little more common. Not sure how often this class is played, but I do think it's a really, really good one. And now for our Archmage friends, they're working on your fly ability. This was one of the XP exploits. Some Archmages figured out how to constantly fly, and when you were flying, enemies left you alone, and so you could exploit the game and get a bunch of XP with no risk. By the way that this is worded, I feel like they're not done here, so if you find a way to do this, I would not recommend it. You risk being banned. But yeah, it's long story short, this was one of the big issues that led to all those XP exploit conversations that I talked about earlier. Before we move on with the rest of the patch notes, I just want to call out the 3 classes that did not get any love or hate in these patch notes. First off, the Enchanter. The Enchanter takes a penalty to health and mana and physical attack and magical attack. So the more levels you take an Enchanter, the weaker you are at killing something, which is making most people just stay at tier 1 Enchanter, which does not feel right. I don't know what the answer is, but I hope that they do something to help this class, because I feel like there's going to be no tier 3 Enchanters, and I can't imagine that is what they want. So hopefully they get some love. Another class that was not mentioned was the Necromancer, and I feel like the Necromancer's in an okay place. They do take hits to health and mana, but they do have great magical attack. They also have buffs to physical defense and magical defense. The only thing with this is the Necromancers that I know all play with air, which Necromancers take a hit to, rather than actually use earth and water. I'm not really sure if that's good or bad, but I have seen that with many Necromancer friends that I have. So I'm not sure what to make of that, but hopefully they continue to look at this class. I think these guys should get summons, right? But we'll see. And last but not least, the class that I was praying would get some love in this patch and was completely passed over was the Druid. These poor guys, they do take bonuses to both health and mana, but they take negatives to physical attack and magical attack. And then once again, it makes it so you can't kill anything. And that's just not fun. Now, I am secretly hoping that the reason that Druids were not looked at is because they are going to give Druids something awesome soon. Is that the ability to change forms? Is that the ability to have a pet? I don't know. But this class is bad, and I really hope the devs do something soon, because it stinks that I want to play a Druid, but oh man, it's so bad compared to everything else right now. Oh, I almost forgot about the Barbarian. So the Barbarian is actually in a good place, so they didn't make any changes, but I don't think he really needed it. You do take a negative to physical defense and magical defense, but you have a lot of spells because you're a universal class, and you have arguably some of the coolest vocation skills in the game with telekinesis and roar. So I think these guys are fine. What do you think? Outside of that, there was quite a bit at the tail end of these patch notes to do with like text-based fixes, things like tooltips not originally showing the right information or localization fixes, those sorts of things. So they've updated a lot of text for the game, which is good, so there's less confusion. They've also changed the way that karma is behaving in game, right? There's some bugs that needed to be fixed, and they've changed the personal penalty for regular indulgence, and they've also changed how the personal penalty decreases each day. So just in general, how karma is being affected by you and your player and your actions is now different. And they have also added portals to the open world, another 15, which is going to make getting around quite a bit easier. And this little note is interesting. 2 more counties are work in progress. I'm not sure if that means there's going to be more things in the map or if the map is going to expand. But either way, I am very interested in that. So that's the long short of what was in patch 4 and 5, a little bit of public shaming, a little bit of vocation and class changes and balance, and overall Thieves crying that they can no longer pickpocket me when I'm just trying to go upstairs for a second to get a coffee, and I come back and all my gold's gone. So that's what's going on. Are you still enjoying Reign of Guilds? Is there any sort of video you want me to make? I plan on making a Reign of Guilds versus Mortal Online video, as well as helping you pick the right class for you. Let me know if you're interested in either of those upcoming videos, or if you have your own ideas. I'll be checking out the comments. Thanks for watching. I will catch you later in the next one.